Now, a lot of people have been asking, what do we do in Africa with all these problems which are going on in our continent? We look at countries like South Africa, we look at countries like Niger, Mali, and what is going on in Ivory Coast, Burkina Faso, Togo, and all those countries. How France is devastating a whole big part of the continent. How the United States has, more than 50 military bases on the continent. How our people are suffering in the Congo. We have had a war there for over 60 years since independence in 1960. What do we do about all these problems now? How do we fix this? The problems in Somalia, you know the problems in Somalia, which started by the United States invading that country, which was a beautiful country. It was a very beautiful country, and the United States invaded that country in 1993. And now Libya, the same United States and France, they came and invaded. What do we do about these problems now? How do we approach these problems and start solving them? ISIS, how it has crossed all the way from the Middle East, from the Arabian Desert and whatever, and then it has entered into Libya. Now it went up to Burkina Faso. Now it has gone up to Mozambique. What do we do about these problems? As me myself, I think what I would say is that we need to recognize the problem itself and see it for what it is. We need to understand that this monster, we have a monster, and that monster is imperialism and neocolonialism. Imperialism did not change its ways. Imperialism has always been, European imperialism has been always carried by the same people, and they are Europeans. And the Europeans, and I don't care whether you're talking about in the whites in Canada, whether you're talking about the whites in the United States, these are all Europeans. The ones in Australia, New Zealand, they even have groups. These groups, they call them NATO. You see, they have these groups where they band up together to keep white supremacy going forward and exploiting the world. They have Five Eyes. All these are white supremacist groups, you see, where they band up to keep their domination of the world. So this is a monster we have. So this is the first thing which we have to do. We have to recognize that we have a monster, that is Western imperialism, that is devastating the continent of Africa. And now we have another group of people who are feeding this monster. And these are the group of people who are on the continent, and they call themselves leaders, when in actual sense they are misleaders. And some of these guys, they know what to do, but they ignore what to do because of their selfish interests. And the other thing is that this monster called imperialism and neocolonialism comes and it bribes these groups of people who call themselves that they are Democrats, they are in political parties. So these people are the ones feeding the monster. Now, what must the youth do? Like I said, once we have finished recognizing what we are dealing with a monster called European imperialism, and it is using a tool called neocolonialism and controlling the continent of Africa and its resources. I spoke of France, I spoke of the United States, Britain, and all the other groups who are banding them together, NATO and all the group who are there. So once we understand that we have a monster and we have a group of people on the continent who are feeding this monster with deception, they are feeding the African people with deception that they are engaging in elections, when in actual sense, Africa is losing $100 billion every year. So these people are the ones feeding this monster, because these people every year they come with around $30 billion on the continent, and they take out 100. So they are getting profits of 70 billion. 70 billion, that is what they are taking out of the continent. They come with around 30 billion as investment and foreign aid and whatever and all type of things. And they take out 100 billion. Now, who's feeding this monster? These people who are in political power, who are lying to our people that these people are investors. and they leave them to take the gold, they take the uranium, they take, France does whatever it wants on this continent as long as it is sponsoring, the Confederation of African Football, after every, 4 years, every 3 years, it is sponsoring the Confederation of African Football. So it's free to come and misbehave on the continent. So once we as a people, once we as the youth of Africa have understood these problems, have analyzed these problems, have appreciated the task at hand, then we know that the next step is for us to deal with this monster and the people who are feeding this monster, who are these politicians who are running around in political parties. What Africa needs right now is for us to rise up and deal with these monsters and the people who are feeding these monsters. We deal with them once and for all, because the task of correcting society has always fallen on the youth. It's not the old. You will find that most of the people who are in these positions of political power feeding these neocolonial monster and imperialistic monster, European imperialism, the monster of European imperialism, the people who are feeding it, they are the old. You find that they are the old people. They are feeding it. So the task of correcting society has always fallen on the shoulders of the youth. So once we understand that as African people, as African youth, as the young, then we have to stand up and face this monster head on and deal with it. Deal with it like how Kwame Nkrumah dealt with neocolonialism. Deal with it like how Dr. Martin Luther King dealt with the disrespect and Jim Crow in the United States. Deal with it like how the Black Panthers dealt with segregation and disrespect, and we have to deal with the monster of European imperialism and neocolonialism on this continent. I don't care which type of people are in power and whatever guns they have. We have to stand up and deal with this problem, because if we do not, this monster is going to swallow us completely. You have seen the vaccines which they bring and test here, diseases, they tested them here on the continent. Our people are dying. Our resources are going out. So the riches are being pulled from under our grounds, and these people who are in power feeding this monster, they have their children studying in Europe, studying in the United States, studying in Australia, studying in Canada. This is where their children stay. And they come here and exploit and they aid the monster in eating everything which we have on the continent. So we have to understand that the duty, the responsibility of correcting these anomalies, these mistakes, these problems has always fallen on the youth. And I call upon the African youth to rise up and start demanding the right thing to be done. We need to transform this continent under a transformation program, a rapid transformation program. Programs like the Rapid Africa Plan. So we need to transform. If there is any program that is supposed to be used to transform Africa to a leading economy in the world, because we have enough resources. We have more than 300 to 700 trillion dollars of resources in the ground in African soil. The Congo alone, more than 36 trillion, more than up to 40 trillion. Zimbabwe alone up to 18 trillion dollars. So if you take stock of the resources in Africa, you can reach even up to 700 trillion dollars. So if anything is going to be done on this continent, on this African continent, it is to transform Africa in the shortest time possible. So what these nations have taken 500 years, 600 years, 300 years to do, now we must do in less than 40 years. What China has taken to do in 30 years, we must do in less than 20 years. We can do this as the African youth. There's no reason why we should doubt ourselves. But first of all, we have to remove the stumbling block. We have to remove the monster of imperialism and neocolonialism that is devastating our continent. And then we have to remove the people who are feeding this monster called neocolonialism. So we have to stand firm and believe that this thing can be done. It can be done, we as African youth, if we coordinate our efforts and move forward in determination and strength. and in faith and persistence. I thank you all, and Africa must unite now.